Some drivers arrived in Formula One with so much hype, so much expectation, so much talk surrounding their names that over time we've learned to trust this feedback with a grain of skepticism. There are several cases like this, and it's always the same analogy. This is the next Senna, the next Verstappen, the next Hamilton. Senna himself was considered the next Jim Clark. Maybe even went a little further than that, don't you think? But the story is always the same. A young driver who made a splash in the junior formula, sometimes even a champion over in the United States. And when he entered Formula One, he didn't live up to expectations. Some, it's true, did well, while others didn't succeed, not because of their own fault, lack of talent, or anything like that. But you know how it is. A lot of things have to line up, arriving at the right time in the right team and so on. And so golden dreams ended up falling by the wayside. And it's about them, the drivers, who arrived with high expectations and ended up disappointing, that we're going to talk about today on Splash and Go. Spoiler. There are two Brazilians. Antonio Pizzonia is by many people nicknamed the Jungle Boy because he's from Manaus. He is for many considered a lost talent in the history of Formula One. A raw talent, a lot of speed that ultimately didn't pan out. He started out naturally here in Brazil, and I remember reading about him in the old Quattro Horas magazine saying, he's a guy coming from Manaus to race in São Paulo. He was runner-up in the Formula Vauxhall Junior in England. He won 5 races and the British Formula 3 Championship in 2000. And then he started to attract a lot of attention. In 2001, he won a race in the Formula 3000 Championship, which was the gateway to Formula 1, serving the same role that GP2 and now Formula 2 do today. And then in 2002, he was hired as a test driver for Williams with support from Petrobras. At a time when test drivers actually did thousands of kilometers of testing, he's then announced as a main driver for Jaguar alongside Mark Webber, a team that at the time belonged to the Giant Four, acting as its fourth division, which never really worked out. And when he arrived there, the person who had brought him in, Niki Lauda, was already on his way out, and the result was an early dismissal. He competed in 11 races in the 2002 championship before being replaced by Justin Wilson. Of the 11 races he competed in, there were 5 retirements and finishes of 13th, 14th, 9th, 3 tenths, another 13th, and another 14th place. He then returns to the Williams fold, continues testing, and would fill in for Sir Frank's team. In 2004, he raced in 4 events, scoring points in 3 of them, with 3 7th place finishes and 1 retirement. And in 2005, the last year of Williams BMW, that year he even came very close to becoming a main driver, staying in contention until the very end. It was between him and Nick Heidfeld, who will also appear on this list. At the end of the year, he competed in the last 5 races, debuting in Italy with the 7th place, then finishing 15th in Belgium, retiring in both Brazil and Japan, and ending up 13th in China. That would be his stint in Formula One, which for many did not live up to all the expectations, considering the raw talent he had shown in the junior categories. And there's a funny story from Pizzonia's time in Formula One, even before he made his debut, when he rolled over a passenger car while giving people a ride around the circuit. Some say he braked as if he were driving a Formula One car, but it was just a regular car, and he ended up flipping it with the company's executives on board. You see, it's not just with Brazilians that there's this thing about the new Senna, the new Verstappen, the new so-and-so. Nick Heidfeld was the German Formula 3 champion in 1997 and runner-up in International Formula 3000. And when he arrived in Formula 1, he was considered the new Schumacher. He had several podiums and competed in 183 Grand Prix, which is enough to show that he definitely had some talent. After all, no one retires from Formula 1 just because of years of service. But he never won a single race. And in what was possibly the season when he had the best chance to win, with BMW Sauber in 2008, I've already told the story of Sauber. In this video here at the German Grand Prix, he collided with his teammate Robert Kubica, ruining the race for both cars. Timo Glock was the GP2 champion in 2007, beating Lucas Di Grassi and Kazuki Nakajima, both of whom also made it to Formula 1. He started in 2004, doing just 3 races with Jordan, then took a step back, went to GP2, won the championship I just mentioned, and reappeared behind the wheel of Toyota cars in 2008 and 2009. He scored podiums, 3 of them, 2 second places, one in 2008, one in 2009, and also a third place in 2009 with 2 10th place finishes in those 2 championships as his best results. After that, he did the 2010, 2011, and 2012 seasons with very weak teams, driving the struggling cars of what was first Virgin and later became Marussia, but not having done much more than that and not really having the conditions to do so. His most notable moment was possibly his accidental role in the 2008 championship battle during the final race here at Interlagos. Who doesn't remember? An American, a Red Bull protégé, third place in GP2 in 2005, and with a last name that literally translates to speed. Scott was Bernie Ecclestone's dream pick to finally open the doors for Formula One in America. It didn't work out, always driving for the B team, hoping that maybe one day he'd move up to the A team. We've seen this story play out many times. Speed never took off, and his best result was 9th place at the 2006 Australian Grand Prix. But at the time, 9th place didn't earn any points. And without points, he went on until the end, which also didn't take very long. In the 10th round of the 2007 championship, while racing for Toro Rosso alongside Sébastien Bourdais, he was replaced by a guy who had previously substituted for Robert Kubica at BMW Sobera. Certain Sebastian Vettel was put in the car by the Red Bull group, and the rest is history. And speed would remain just a surname, synonymous with velocity. Anyone who doesn't like Alessandro Zanardi can be a good person. And he went through Formula One at 2 distinct points in his career. First in 1991, substituting at Jordan. Then 3 races with Minardi in 92, and on both occasions without any noteworthy results. And then he appears in 93 and 94 with the struggling Lotus, where he still managed to secure a 6th place here at Interlagos during that legendary victory by Senna in 1993. And then, when Lotus shuts down, he leaves Formula One to race in the United States. He starts over from scratch and wins. He finishes 3rd in the 1996 car championship and takes the titles in 97 and 98, always racing for Chip Ganassi. That catches the attention of Frank Williams, who had already brought Jacques Villeneuve to Formula One, and thinks, here's another guy who can get me results. But it was a disaster. Zanardi did the full 1999 season alongside Ralf Schumacher and scored nothing. Not a single point, many retirements, and his best results were a 7th, 2 8th, and an 11th place. He would then return to the United States, and in 2001 would take the wheel of a Monon car. Well, even during the adaptation period, he had already managed a 4th place, but then he suffered a terrible accident, lost both legs, and would end his participation in Formula categories. But this guy is unstoppable. He kept racing GTs in adapted cars, won Olympic events and medals, until he had another cycling accident, and today we don't really know exactly what his health condition is. Another one who came from the United States during the kart era with his reputation sky high, Brazilian Cristiano da Matta, yet another victim of Toyota. He had won the 2002 championship with 7 victories, powered by a Toyota engine in America, and was then given a ticket to go to the United States, where the Japanese manufacturer had a team it was trying to get off the ground. However, all the respect da Matta had with the Japanese management did not carry over to the Formula One team management. He debuted in 2003 and completed the full season. He had some results. 2 6th places, 2 7ths, with a car that broke down quite a lot. That's true. And he was in his 2nd season. He even led 17 laps at Silverstone that year, in a race where Barrichello put on a real show and won. He returns in 2004, even manages a 6th place, but before the end of the season, he's replaced. And taking his place will be someone else who could be on this list and maybe will be in the future, Ricardo Zonta. Years later, he has already mentioned in several interviews that he met with a Toyota executive who was sent directly to meet him in the United States and said, "We owe you an apology. Sébastien Bourdais was the victim of 2 things that have crushed drivers throughout history. Coming from IndyCar, and on top of that, entering the Red Bull sphere of influence. We all know what that does to drivers. Bourdais was a 4-time consecutive Champ Car champion, which used to be called CART. 2004, 2005, 2006, and 2007, an unprecedented achievement that caught Red Bull's attention, leading them to invite him to race for Toro Rosso. In 2008, he would be paired with another Sebastian Vettel alongside him. He would race the entire 2008 season, scoring points only twice. A 7th place in his debut in Australia and another 7th in Belgium. Returning for 2009, he scored points 2 more times with 2 8th place finishes in Australia and Monaco. And then, well, you know how Red Bull is. He was replaced in the middle of 2009 by someone who maybe wasn't even worth it, 𝘾𝙤𝙥𝙮𝙯. Do you remember him? Don't lie. After that, he kept on racing. He still races today in endurance. And despite the impressive resume he brought to Formula 1 four-time car champion and a Formula 3000 title before Old Age, ended up being just another one of those who arrived with a big name and heavyweight reputation, but couldn't go any further in Formula 1. Kart champion in 1999, winner of the Indianapolis 500 in 2000 as a rookie. Hold on, look, at that time, the categories were separate and Indy was not part of kart. I've already told the story of Indy in this video here, in case you have any doubts. Montoya was yet another, yes, who caught the attention of Frank Williams, who had already brought in Jacques Villeneuve, Alessandro Zanardi, and continued to look to the United States as a place to find cheaper drivers who had already been trained by someone else. Montoya, like Williams, underwent a series of tests in 2000 to be ready for the task of taking over a Williams BMW alongside Ralf Schumacher, and he would make his appearance in Brazil in grand style, catching none other than Michael Schumacher off guard at the restart of the Brazilian Grand Prix right at the beginning, making a beautiful overtaking move that even included squeezing the German through the Senna S. And no, we can show the footage here, but it was beautiful. And at that moment, everyone thought, someone has finally arrived to challenge the German. And it's true. At times, Montoya did just that. And in many of those moments, it was clear, had the necessary speed. Just imagine if you really wanted it that much. But just as he was phenomenally fast, he also had emotional inconsistencies. He got fed up and quit his contract with McLaren. In the middle of the 2006 season, some say his relationship with Ron Dennis had completely soured after he had an accident playing tennis, which, according to some, was actually a fall while riding motocross boat in his day. Between 2001 and 2006, especially in 2001 and 2005, he was a guy who made Schumacher worried and made him think twice before going into a corner. And even if he didn't live up to all the hype he had when he arrived in Formula 1, you also can't say he was a failure. He won 7 races, stood on the podiums 13 times, and set 12 fastest laps, with his best results being in the 2002 and 2003 championships, where he finished 3rd in both. Michael Andretti was a point of tension in the relationship between Marlboro, Philip Morris, and McLaren. Ron Dennis obviously wanted to keep the multi-million-dollar sponsorship he had secured with the cigarette manufacturer, which had helped him acquire McLaren from Ted Mayer by joining, and fusing Project Voice, Formula 2 and 3 team with the somewhat struggling McLaren team. I'll still tell that story in the Teams We Love series. Absolutely. So Philip Morris was pressuring McLaren, saying, I'll put this guy, if not with you, then with Ferrari. And yes, Michael even tested for Ferrari while Ron Dennis kept dodging, using as an excuse that he was also bringing in some drivers from his young driver program, Emanuele Pirro, Mika Häkkinen. But at some point, he had to give in to the pressure, and in 1993, the announced main driver duo was Michael Andretti and Mika Häkkinen. And what about Senna? I've already told the story of that negotiation in this video here. Michael had been Indy champion in 91 and won 8 out of 17 races that season. He also had the support of Bernie Ecclestone, who once again wanted to bring in an American driver capable of winning. So in 93, he was announced as a main driver. And who got left out? Häkkinen, because Senna obviously ended up racing. And Mika Häkkinen, who would later become a 2-time world champion, had to sit on the sidelines. But not for long, because Michael made a series of mistakes, showed flashes of speed, but also a broad lack of understanding about what Formula 1 actually demanded from a driver. He never, for example, and there's a documentary on YouTube, we'll show you a few clips. He even considered living in Europe, which was seen by McLaren and the Formula 1 world as a clear sign that he was underestimating the challenge. He stayed far from the factory, rarely showed up, and got lost in this constant back and forth across the Atlantic. And the famous phrase, I remember reading it in Quattro Rodas when I was 7 or 8 years old from Mario, his father, saying, I don't think Michael needs to worry about Ayrton Senna. It's Senna who needs to worry about Michael. Needless to say, there was a huge gap between reality and what they thought, especially in this regard. It was a massacre. Senna in 93 was performing above his already very high average, and for the American, there was absolutely nothing left. He struggled a lot with the most technologically advanced cars in history. 93, don't forget, was the year of active suspension, traction control, and even pre-programmed gearboxes that shifted gears automatically when reaching the desired RPM. And so, coming from the United States, where everything was 100% analog, he struggled and by mid-year was let go. But as a consolation prize, he perhaps left Formula 1 on a high note, with a 3rd place finish at the Italian Grand Prix in Monza. He would return to the United States, continue racing from 1994 to 2002, win a huge number of races that I can't even count here, and then switch sides of the pit wall, becoming a team, Principal Andretti, who won races and championships. In fact, Tony Kanaan became Indy champion with Andretti Green. And he's still around today, picking fights with Formula One, and in a way, even managed to get what he wanted by creating an 11th spot on the grid. Jean Alesi is without a doubt the ultimate lost talent, truly the perfect example in the long and storied history of Formula One. There's no one who makes a list of those who could have made it but didn't without including his name. He was the French Formula 3 champion in 1987 and runner-up in International Formula 3000 in 1989, racing for a certain team called Jordan. I've already told the story of Jordan in this video here. Then, at the French Grand Prix that same year, he was called up by Tyrrell to replace Michel Alboreto and right away scored a 4th place finish racing at home. That was enough, and Tyrrell signed him for 1,990. He made his debut, and in his very first race as a full-time driver racing on the streets of Phoenix, Arizona, he fought for victory against the all-powerful McLaren of a certain Ayrton Senna. He gets overtaken, but then takes the position back from the Brazilian. Suddenly, everyone is saying, my God, where did this guy come from? That was enough. All of a sudden, the entire Formula One world was after him. He signs a contract with Williams. Williams misses the deadline to announce it. He gets worried. He realizes from the shifting tectonic plates that he was being played for a fool, because Frank Williams was trying to bring in Senna and Mansell to form a super team, and he, Alesi, would be left out. So he signs with Ferrari, which at that point in 1990 was fighting for the title with McLaren. It seemed to make sense. But Ferrari in 91 would be a disaster. The case ends up in court. A huge mess. I've already made both long and short videos about it. I won't remember the thumbnails to show you here. But in the end, the one who would lose out in this story was Alesi. And maybe us, because he clearly had the skill to be a Formula One champion. Williams came after him. He ended up fighting to stay with Ferrari. And who would have the unbeatable car in 92 and 93? Williams. So in a parallel reality, lost in the Matrix, Alesi might have suddenly become a 2-time Formula One world champion, or even more. Another lost talent who arrived in Formula One making waves, full of hype, and became part of history. In the end, Alesi would win only one Grand Prix, the 1995 Canadian Grand Prix, collecting podiums, results, great performances, and big blunders. But he wouldn't go beyond that, ending his career already in the 2000s. All of them great drivers, all of them with a lot of skill, all of them arrived with a big name and ended up not doing much more than that. There are others, there certainly are others. I remember Gianno Trulli arriving in Formula One in 1997 with Minardi, being called by the Italian press the new Senna. Riccardo Zonta, whom I mentioned earlier, is another one people used to say, this guy could make it rain. That's why I'm already leaving the comment section as a suggestion for you to list all those little geniuses who seemed like they were going to break the stopwatch, but ended up not making it. Comment down below. Did I forget anyone else? I'm sure I did. I only talked about 10. So we can do a second edition in the near future. So that was another episode of Splash and Go on YouTube. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like. It's free. It doesn't cost anything, and it really helps the channel. Do me this favor, do us this favor, and show the algorithm the strength of the biggest and best Formula One community in Brazil. 3.5 million views per month, every month, with likes, comments, and hype pouring in. And we have more of that than channels with 10 or 15 times our number of subscribers, because you guys are awesome. When I ask you to leave a like, a comment, tell us where you're watching from, or list and suggest these drivers, you actually do it. That shows the algorithm our engagement, and then it responds by spreading our content all over the internet. That's why I keep nagging and asking for it. So you don't miss anything we do here. We have notification channels, Instagram, Telegram, and WhatsApp, where you can join and get an automatic message every time I post one of these videos. The link is down below in the description. And last but not least, our social media, our handles are showing here at the bottom, and the links are also in the description: Instagram, Twitter, Threads, and TikTok, where there's content all the time. I'll see you there too. All right, that's it for now. Big hug.